Okie. Just moments ago, Representative Jasmine Crockett delivered a very sharp and direct statement toward General Pam Bondi. The focus was on the Epstein files, the priorities of the Department of Justice, and allegations surrounding freedom of speech. Her remarks were framed as a national-level critique, targeting the very top of the system. But right here, a critical shift occurs. When the floor passes to the other side, General Pam Bondi does not directly engage with the Epstein allegations in detail. Instead, she redirects the focus entirely, rather than staying on the national political controversy. She pivots to state-level violent crime cases, murder convictions, rape cases, and crimes involving undocumented immigrants. So the question becomes, is this a defense strategy? Because in politics, there's a well-known tactic. When a debate begins to corner you, you change the terrain of the debate. Crockett's accusations were centered on federal power, corruption, and high-level connections. Bondi's response, however, was framed around public safety, street crime, and local convictions. In other words, they are not arguing within the same framework. One side is asking, is the system protecting power at the top? The other is saying, is the country facing a public safety crisis? That shift transforms the hearing from a legal confrontation into a fully political narrative battle. So the real question is this: was this an actual response, or was it a strategic redirection? As viewers, what we need to pay attention to is whether the original question was directly answered. A strong defense engages the core of the accusation. When the response moves away from the center, it may indicate a deliberate strategy. Watch the full video, and afterward, I'll share my own analysis and perspective.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chairman. And to be clear, I'm not going to ask any questions of this witness because this witness has revealed that she has no intentions of answering questions. But instead, I'm going to ask some very basic questions really quickly of my colleague, Becca Ballant, if she will answer: right or wrong, raping children?
Wrong.
Right or wrong, killing random citizens?
Definitely wrong.
Right or wrong, enriching yourself as the sitting president of the United States?
Definitely wrong.
Okay, thank you, because I probably never would have got that with our witness. Our witness, who somehow is a lawyer but does not understand how it works with witnesses. I'm not really sure what law school she went to and what all kind of cases she tried, but typically when you come into a space and somebody's a witness, then they sit there and they answer questions instead of asking questions. And then we also have this objection that we use as lawyers called non-responsive, when a witness fails to actually answer the question. But nevertheless, let me address the survivors, because that's exactly who they are. They are not victims, they are survivors. Let me say thank you for having more courage and moral clarity in your pinky fingers than the entire Department of Justice. We are currently the laughingstock of the world, partially because of the failed leadership within the DOJ, as we see kings and queens falling everywhere around the world. But we don't know the basics of right and wrong in this country, because it's not about partisanship. And that's why I applaud Thomas Massie, because he's the only person on the Republican side that has a backbone and knows how to stand up to corruption. But nevertheless, let me keep going. My Democratic colleagues have been attacked this entire committee hearing. They have been lied on. And frankly, the American people weren't looking for that. They were looking for answers about the corruption that they see coming from this administration. In the written testimony of this witness, of this particular witness, she stated that when she took office, she had two main goals. The first was to end the weaponization of justice, and second, to return the department to its core mission. Not only have you lied about both, you've intentionally done the exact opposite. You're spending more taxpayer resources arresting journalists than you are prosecuting pedophiles and creeps. In fact, your boss, the President of the United States, stated that this administration, quote, took the freedom of speech away. And at your direction, DOJ has arrested Don Lemon and Georgia Fort. And I might add that y'all actually had a judge that rejected y'all for trying to arrest Don Lemon before, just like the grand jury rejected y'all as it relates to Senator Kelly, just like a grand jury rejected y'all as it relates to Senator Slotkin, just like the case against Tish James was dismissed and the case against Mr. Comey was dismissed. I completely don't get how it is that you're sitting at the top of DOJ, because you don't seem to be good at your job. You're spending more taxpayer resources arresting these journalists. In fact, We know after Georgia Fort and Don Lemon were arrested, we know that there were homes of journalists that were raided. We know that threatened prosecution against students protesting your actions and forced tech companies to remove apps used to track ISIS activities. But let's circle back to you protecting pedophiles and creeps, because I want to talk about the president and his possible involvement with Jeffrey Epstein. Now, I don't know what the president might have done with Jeffrey Epstein, but unlike this administration, I believe that facts matter. So let's talk about the facts. Fact number one, Donald Trump is one of the most named people in the Epstein files. At least 5,000 files contains more than 38,000 references to Trump, his wife, or Mar-a-Lago. Fact number two, Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell made young girls available to Trump on multiple occasions. For example, according to this file, Ghislaine Maxwell presented a young girl to President Trump who spent more than 20 minutes apparently flirting with her. Here's another example. This shows notes from FBI investigators that describe Jeffrey Epstein transporting a victim to Mar-a-Lago to meet with President Trump, where he bragged to Trump that, quote, "This is a good one." Now, I'm not saying that the president is a pedophile, but there is a lot of evidence in these files that suggests that he's very close friends with a lot of men who are pedophiles. What's crazy about all of this is just that this is a big cover-up. And this administration is engaged in it. In fact, this administration is complicit. But there are numerous others, like how the DOJ is attempting to obstruct justice in the investigation of the rogue agents who have murdered American citizens, or how the DOJ seized voter data from Fulton County in an attempt to steal the 2026 midterm elections, or how federal agents have Tom Homan on tape accepting a bribe and your agency killed the investigation, or how your agency is ready to give the president a $230 million payday, which is unconstitutional. The Constitution is clear. The president shall not receive any payment except his salary while in office. The fact of the matter is that you will be remembered as one of the worst attorney generals in history. An attorney general who has prioritized obstruction over justice, corruption over the law, fealty to the president over loyalty to the Constitution. And Mr. Chairman, I will yield.
Gentlelady yields. Gentleman from Missouri is recognized. Excuse me, gentleman from Kansas, the Attorney General, former Attorney General, Mr. Schmidt is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and General Bondi, thanks for being here. Did you have anything you wanted to say before we talk?
I do. Thank you, Congressman. Thank you, my friend, for many years. I find it interesting that she didn't even want to try, Congresswoman Crockett, to ask any questions, because she certainly did not condemn her leader, Hakeem Jeffries, for taking money from Jeffrey Epstein after Epstein was convicted. And I will be brief to give you your time, Congressman. This is what she didn't want to talk about. Texas, from Cuba, convicted, homicide, arson, weapon offense.
Convicted.
You know,
so what we
Estrada,
talking about? Convict
Texas,
some of these
convicted,
perpetrators
homicide.
that rape these women that are
Chairman,
sitting
time
behind
belongs-
you.
time
But
belongs
you
to the
refuse
gentleman
to
from
even acknowledge
Kansas.
they are here.
Time belongs to the
Texas.
gentleman from Kansas.
Mr. Chairman, could I have a few seconds
You
back
bet,
to make
you
up
bet.
for the yelling? Thank you. General, did
you,
you have anything
Congress.
further to say?
Texas, convicted of homicide. Cecil Joseph, from Dominican Republic. Texas, convicted for kidnapping, rape. Khalid Khan, from Afghanistan. That's why they want to talk about Epstein and not what's happening in their own states.
Up to this point, Representative Jasmine Crockett does not begin with a technical accusation. Instead, she opens with universal morality. Is it right or wrong? Is child abuse wrong? Is killing innocent civilians wrong? Is enriching yourself while in office wrong? The answers are obvious, and that is precisely why these questions are powerful. This is a classic rhetorical locking strategy. She forces the other side out of gray areas and into a black and white moral frame. Legal debates are complex, moral debates are clear. Crockett deliberately avoids technical, legal details, because that space creates room for defense. Instead, she establishes a foundation of moral clarity. By stating early on that this witness has no intention of answering, she weakens the credibility of the person before the substance of the exchange even unfolds. This is critical. Once credibility is questioned, everything said afterward is filtered through doubt. This is about shaping perception before discussing content. Her opening is not merely an accusation, it is the construction of psychological pressure. She prepares the audience to think there is a moral problem here. This is not a procedural exchange. It is a legitimacy challenge. When the discussion moves to the Epstein files, the language becomes even more strategic. Crockett does not directly say guilty. Instead, she says, "I'm not calling the president a pedophile." But there are numerous references in the files. This is a crucial political communication technique, controlled implication. A direct accusation would carry legal risk, but by invoking files, references, and FBI notes, she frames the discussion as document-based. This allows suspicion to be introduced without issuing a formal charge. The language is deliberately dual-layered. If challenged aggressively, she can say, "I never made that claim." Yet in the audience's mind, the association has already formed. In the media age, this is powerful because the battlefield is public perception, not a courtroom. What matters here is that Crockett does not declare a verdict. She creates an atmosphere of inquiry. And in politics, sometimes asking the question is more powerful than answering it. The strongest layer of Crockett's remarks is not personal, but institutional. She challenges the Department of Justice as a whole. She contrasts moral clarity with institutional conduct. This is not merely a personal attack, it is structural criticism. Why is this powerful? Because individuals can defend themselves. Systems are harder to defend. When you shift the debate from a person's behavior to institutional decay, the scope of the issue expands. This also resonates with voter psychology. People respond more intensely to narratives of systemic corruption than to isolated scandals. Crockett turns the Epstein files into a symbol, a test, of whether power is being held accountable. In that sense, the files are not just about one case. They represent a broader question. Are those at the top being protected? Now let's examine the countermove. Bondi does not dive into the technical specifics of the Epstein allegations. Instead, she pivots toward murder convictions, sexual assault cases, and crimes committed by undocumented immigrants. This is not accidental. It is a deliberate reframing. In politics, this is known as issue reframing. If a topic places you on the defensive, you shift to terrain where you are stronger. The Epstein files represent an elite-level, complex controversy. Street crime, however, is immediate, emotional, and highly tangible. Bondi redirects the message toward this. The real threat is not elite speculation at the top, but real crime on the ground. This framing appeals directly to voter psychology. Public safety is a mobilizing issue, particularly among conservative constituencies. However, from an analytical standpoint, the original Epstein question remains technically unanswered. That distinction matters. In politics, there are two types of power, the power to answer and the power to set the agenda. Answering is defensive. Agenda setting is control. Bondi does not fully step into defense. Instead, she opens a new file, a new topic. Is that avoidance, or is it strategic dominance? When you refuse to engage with your opponent's frame and instead impose your own, you seize narrative control. But this is risky. The audience may begin to ask, why wasn't the original question addressed? At this point, power is shaped by perception. Who keeps the original question alive? Who shifts attention elsewhere? In political communication, silence can sometimes be intentional strategy. This hearing is not merely a technical legal debate, it is a battle of narratives. Crockett's narrative, power at the top, may be shielding elites from accountability. Bondi's narrative, the nation faces immediate threats from crime at the ground level. Neither side is truly trying to persuade the other. Each is speaking to their base. The Epstein question remains partially unanswered, while crime statistics are emphasized in detail. This reveals something important. The winner of a political exchange is not always the one with the strongest legal argument, but the one who controls the frame. Ultimately, the question is this: was this a moment of accountability or a stage for reinforcing political positioning? As viewers, we must ask, who actually answered the question and who simply strengthened their own narrative? In politics, power often lies not in the answer itself, but in the frame surrounding it. Don't forget to turn on notifications so you don't miss the next video.